You're listening to an Anazao Ministries podcast.
Hey guys, Christian here. Normally on the show, we attempt to keep things as child-friendly as possible, but every now and then we can hit some harder subject matters or may even have some verbal discourses that may not be suitable for younger or more sensitive ears to hear. In this episode, there may be either a discussion on more mature topics or may have strong language, or perhaps both at once. Your discretion is advised.
Is season 1 of Rick and Morty perfect? How does it stand in the pantheon of adult cartoons? Is it still the cultural phenomenon it once was? Can Rick Sanchez teach us anything about human nature? And what does the future hold for Rick and Morty? What's up, everybody? I'm Nick. This is Systematic Geekology. We are the priests of the geeks, and we're going to be addressing some of these topics about Rick and Morty. And I'm here. The we in this episode is myself and Will the Thrill. Rose here.
Hey, everybody. We've been wanting to do this episode for a while, and we've had to convince the schedule and our own schedules and the stars and the multiverse and other hosts to say this needs to happen pronto, and we finally made it happen.
Yeah, we had to
shot
do some
portal gun. We shot a portal gun, and Nick and I jumped through it, and here we are. Record an episode together
right here in Zencaster world, in that old person world or whatever. Is that this season or is that the next season?
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows?
The seasons all jumbled together.
The point is, we pulled some Rick Sanchez science to make this happen.
Mm-hmm. We did.
So I guess before we go through, it's just a trigger warning to our more sensitive viewers out there or listeners that don't really like adult cartoons or crude humor. You've been warned. It's Rick and Morty. There's a character named Mr. Poopy Butthole. So there you go.
I'll add to that. It's weird that we're unashamed Christian podcast, but we also make no secret that we have a broad spectrum of Christian beliefs here, from conservative to liberal and everywhere in between. And we have a broad audience, and this show isn't for everybody. If you're sensitive to these things, then you don't have to watch it. You don't need to watch it. I think it's hilarious. I think it's well written. I think they ask some big questions. Obviously, the people who wrote this are not people of faith or even believe in God, but they're still wrestling with some big existential questions that I think are important for us to face.
Amen.
And also in the kind of the pop culture geek world, they need to be addressed. We need to talk about it. It's hugely popular. And you have two people of faith here who are willing to talk about it, even entertained by it and laugh at it and wrestle with it. So, yeah. If it's not your cup of tea, no worries, no shame, no geek shaming, cool. But if you want to try it out for the first time, or if you're a fan and want to chime in with us and talk about it and geek out on it with us, then welcome to the table.
Heck yeah. So speaking of our diverse interests and loves and backgrounds, what's something that you've been nerding out on lately, Will?
Yeah, I went to a Comic-Con last week, and Ray and Josh and I were in person together again, running around like a Comic-Con floor, like two happy geeks, with a friend of mine, Lee. It was his birthday. Shout out to Lee Stutz. Yeah, Lee. And we went to Heroes Con in Charlotte and saw some creators that we really love, writers and artists and everywhere in between. So geeking out hard on that. That was a lot of fun. It was a lot squeezing in just a few hours on one day, but yeah, getting the Comic-Cons back up and going again was super fun. So geeked out hard on that.
That's rad. I'm jealous. There's one happening in Knoxville. It's called Fanboy Con or something. And all of the actors, not all of them, but a large portion of the actors who played in the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings films are going to be there. Oh. Sadly, I will not be able to make it, but I was very sad. And it looks really cool. But it's exciting that all these cons are kind of popping up and being attended again.
Looking like the before times, there's one in North Carolina here, one that I've been a part of for a while, coming up in November. I'm excited about too. I'm hoping that Systematic Geekology might have, maybe do a panel, maybe do a live podcast from the Comic-Con. We'll see. We're trying to work something out, making no promises, but we're going to work on it. We're going to see what happens.
I like it. And, with Comic-Cons and stuff, you get lots of nerdy things happening simultaneously. And in my own world, I have had two people. So I've watched Game of Thrones, it's a show, but I never read the books. So I started on the first book, and I've also never read the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. So I've started both of those. So I finished the first Dark Tower book, and now I'm almost done with the first Game of Thrones book. And so I'm going to flip-flop in between and just go through that series, because it's obviously they're both staples of nerd culture. So, and I enjoy both.
And there's so many Game of Thrones books, you'll probably finish those before the next one's written.
Good Lord, you're so right, though.
You got plenty of time, I think.
Plenty of time. So that's what we're nerding out on, and we're going to jump right into Rick and Morty, because that's what we're here to talk about. So, Will, when and how did you get introduced to Rick and Morty, and what did you think when you saw it for the first time? Or at least, do you remember seeing an ad for it and remember your reaction to it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I big fan of Adult Swim on the Cartoon Network.
Yeah,
Saturday night they have the anime night, and then Sunday they had the comedy adult cartoons that were running. And so, as being a minister, sometimes I got to go to bed a little bit earlier on Saturday night to get up on Sunday morning. Some of us got to work on Sunday morning, but some nights I'm trying to get to sleep. I'll just I put the anime on Saturday night and just kind of fall asleep to it. And then on Sunday night, tired, good day's work, I'll check out and see what's going on with the adult cartoons and see what, I'm a big fan of the adult cartoons that make me laugh. And I do remember seeing a little bit about Rick and Morty and didn't quite understand it. I think I saw the pilot and just thought, like, the pilot's not my favorite, but they're just trying to set the tone. And, who's this drunk grandpa who's hanging out with his kid is like a ripoff of Back to the Future. And I was just like, okay, whatever. I'm not going to really, hone in on that. Not my cup of tea. But then later on, kept hearing about it. This buzz about Rick and Morty, and then Rick and Morty started showing up like at Comic-Cons,
right.
And people were cosplaying. There were T-shirts, and I was like, "What is going on?" And people talking about how funny it is, and I was like, "All right, I'll go back and check these out." So I found them and watched, all the seasons, kind of caught up to, and then watched them in real time now. Whenever they come out and debut, won't miss an episode, just to see what kind of shenanigans and craziness is going to go on. So, but plays through that first season, which we're going to talk about today. The first season, there's 6 seasons, and this came out 10 years ago, like 2013.
Man, pretty close. Yeah, something like
so
that.
I think it's been around. It's been in pop culture for a decade, and in the zeitgeist and the memes of the day. So it's out there, and it was kind of cool. A little late to it, but then caught on, that was kind of my introduction. How about you, Nick? When did you discover it, or how did you discover it, and how did it lure you in?
Yeah, man. I'm also a big Adult Swim fan. Been kind of a staple of my early interests for nerdy things. I'm a wee tyke, and so Adult Swim started becoming really popular when I was around first grade, second grade. So I'm just a babe, right. But I would also just refuse to go to sleep. And my parents, we all had TVs in our rooms, and so I would turn on the TV and turn the volume real low, like I wasn't supposed to. And I didn't know that there was a difference between anime and American cartoons and adult cartoons, right, or whatever. I would just had it on the background. And so I got introduced to things like Dragon Ball Z really early, and this Adult Swim stuff, but I didn't really get it. You know what I mean? It would be humor. Some of it was inappropriate. And I knew I wasn't supposed to be watching it, but I didn't know why. And my dad came in and heard the TV or saw the light or something. And first he was mad. But that I was up, but then he was like, "You're not allowed to watch this." And of course, then I was like, okay, well, I need to make sure that I'm watching this, and continue to watch Adult Swim throughout my adolescence and into adulthood. So I was like either right at the end of college or had just graduated when Rick and Morty came out. And I actually hadn't heard of it. So I was kind of busy with life, didn't have the money to pay for TV or streaming services at the time. And I have a friend from high school who we watched all the Adult Swim stuff together. And he texted me and he was like, have you seen Rick and Morty? And I was like, I kind of heard about it, but I don't know. So he sent me, so the creators, Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland, used to have an online thing first before YouTube was a thing. They had their own website where they did comics similar to like Homestar Runner, if y'all know Homestar Runner, but instead it was like very adult humor. And Rick and Morty was originally this cartoon called Doc and Marty, basically a cartoon ripoff of Back to the Future. Send me this video, and it is very NSFW. But if you want to go search it out, it's really funny, and that's what basically got Adult Swim, from what I understand, to purchase it and start, get the thing rolling for Rick and Morty. But I laughed my ass off at the stupid little crappy cartoon pilot. And then of course I saw Mr. Meeseeks first. He said, if you want to get into it, watch the Meeseeks episodes first. So season 1 had already begun. And that might be arguably the best episode ever, in my opinion. So I watched it, absolutely loved it, and have continued to keep up with Rick and Morty ever since. Yeah. And Dan Harmon being the creator of Community, which is like one of my family and friends like favorite sitcoms of all time. And you can see like in that TV show, he's still working out some of this kind of meta narrative, multiverse characters, like deep dives into like geek culture, pop culture, Dungeons and Dragons, movie references, all those things. He's kind of working out in that TV show that sometimes, the executives and the audience got, sometimes they didn't, and so then you give him like an avenue, like animation and voice actors to kind of do whatever crazy thing they want to do and can think of in terms of like crazy ideas with multiverse and whatever science fiction, and they just go to town, like that sense of humor. And I it's not everybody's sense of humor. Sometimes people have looked at my sense of humor and thought it was suspect, but it makes me laugh out loud. And there's some references and things to you're like, oh my gosh. But yeah, so Dan Harmon, his style and sense of humor was right up my alley. When it started with Community and then led in, and then when I found out Rick and Morty was behind it, I was like, okay, all right, gave a little bit more legs and legitimacy and in kind of my world. Man, it's funny because Dan Harmon early on, before that, Monster House. Have you seen that movie?
No.
It's a kids horror movie, and Spielberg produced it, and I think Dan Harmon wrote it. But I think that was kind of his first successful foray into Hollywood.
Oh wow!
And I mean, it's one of my favorite Halloween movies. Like, it's tradition for me to watch it. But then when I found out that also kind of similar, I was like, oh, Dan Harmon did Rick and Morty and Monster House. Like, no wonder I love Rick and Morty, because it's the same humor, references, etc. But yeah, also, yeah. So I totally feel or empathize with you about having my humor being suspect by other people.
That's how we get along, Nick. That's how we get along. And Dan Harmon isn't without his skeletons in the closet in terms of some of the things he's done or said or tweeted, and then Justin Roiland, I guess is how you say he's as in trouble as of late for being abusive and being super weird and toxic in the workplace. So don't even know if he's coming back to this show. He's a big part. They're partners and big part of the voices and the creativity behind it. So yeah, whenever you get like super weird, good sense of humor / craziness and off the wall stuff, sometimes I can go down roads of unhealthy things, in terms of the creative process, and the artistic mind can take you to weird places. But they, so that we'll have to say, we know that there's a lot of baggage that come to these creators,
right?
But looking past that and look at the story they're trying to tell and what they're doing and its place in pop culture and in the geekverse and where people go to look for narratives to attach meaning to and purpose, then I think it's a topic we should talk about. I'll see if let's see if Joshua can attach this to the thread or the episode notes. But one of our co-hosts and friends, Sari, wrote like a great blog post in a paper in seminary about Rick and Morty. I have to hunt that down. It's really good. I don't know if she's listening, but I got her posted a couple of places with our friends over at Pop Culture and Theology. But
no way.
Put it in that. Yeah, it's really well done. I forgot all what she said in there, but it's basically, it's really good. She wrote it for a class. We'll hunt it down.
Heck yes, I love that. Yes, Ari, give us your Rick and Morty paper to share. So cool. Yeah, Dan Harmon, I think, apologized, and like at least Adult Swim and other people forgave him. And then Justin Roiland, I don't know about him, but he has been terminated his deal. Adult Swim, as soon as his stuff happened, they kicked him out. So it'll be interesting to see. So right now, at least, Dan Harmon seems to be somebody that we like because he is funny and has at least apologized without being a jerk. And right now, Justin Roiland is the jury is I don't know if it's in or out yet for Justin Roiland. Right now, I think it's out. So anyway, so I guess since we addressed all that, I guess season 1, man, we talked about kind of how you feel about it. Obviously, we think it's funny, but season 1, after you revisit it, how do you feel about season 1?
I didn't realize all that happened in season 1. Like I in my mind, there's 6 seasons and they're still kind of rolling them out. In terms of going back and rewatching and remembering some of the characters and the things they introduced in the season 1, it's like, oh yeah, that happened in season 1. That person introduced in season 1, and they just kind of build upon all these ideas and characters and things. And let's see, how many episodes we got? We got 11,
10,
11.
Is there 11?
I think there's 11 with the pilot.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Oh, you're right.
And then the pilot, and then 11. And the pilot, if you watch the pilot, it is just typical pilot, not as good as the rest of the series. It's just working out some ideas or floating some things out there so someone will pick them up, and it basically comes out, you have a drunk granddad who's somehow living with his family because of something that has happened, and he takes his grandson on adventures like kind of a crazy rated R Back to the Future kind of thing. And they introduce like wacky aliens and interdimensional travel and those kinds of things. So it's just kind of the setup, and it is, Rick really doesn't flex as much just because he's been drinking all the time. He's drunk, and he's definitely trying to self-medicate for some reason. We'll find out in later seasons why he is self-medicating, all those things. So all that's rolling out. So you have the pilot, and then I really think my personal favorite episode 2, you then really get into the heart of what's going to happen in this series and what's going to roll out. Do you want me to go ahead and talk about my favorite episode?
I'll just tell you that I agree with you that it was one of those things where, it's kind of similar. I was like, dang, I forgot all of this stuff happens. And it does start off where it's like Rick is kind of this bumbling alcoholic douchebag, and it's funny, but he cares about his family and loves Morty. Then it's as you progress, it starts getting more heavy, and like there's more tension within the family. Rick's, antics start affecting his family negatively, and it starts creating this whole thing. So, and then
and we can talk about some of those things. Yeah, you're right. Like it's heavy. Like the creators are leaning into the crazy science and science fiction, and it leans hard into existentialism and nihilism. And the universe, there's an indifferent universe who doesn't care about you, and there's no even Rick even says, there is no God, Morty, just rip that Band-Aid right off. And so you're like, oh boy, okay. Just rip that Band-Aid off right now. And they roll with it. But yet behind that, even as we, explore those existential questions, and nihilism is definitely an option, right? Like you look at the universe and you're like, yeah, that's an option, an uncaring universe full of pain and suffering. Nihilism is an option. But then as they start talking about no meaning, there's no purpose, and it's just like just one adventure to the next. There's still a family connection. They still care for each other. They're still looking for meaning and purpose. There's still pain at the loss of family members. There's not wanting to die. There's like reaching for meaning behind death. And is there anything worth in my life in the first place? So they're still wrestling with those questions. And so that's where I go into it as a person of faith who looks at this and say like, yeah, these guys who write this are not like going to church or like confessing in kind of like Christian creeds or anything, but they're definitely still wrestling with those big questions that every single human being wrestles with in terms of, is there a purpose behind this universe? And if there's not, then where do I find meaning? If there is, then what does that look like? So that's what's going on behind the crazy, inappropriate, like humor that you definitely don't want like a first grader watching.
Right.
Like, I don't know if you start.
Yeah, agreed. Not only just for the, the dick and fart jokes, but for just even how existentially heavy it can get. Yeah, I just don't think they could handle it. And I think that, like you said, with nihilism there, it's like the best and worst explorations of nihilism come out in the show, not like just the, oh, nothing matters, so let's just destroy everything. It's more of like nothing matters, so how do we make our own meaning? And all of the characters kind of go through that. But then also there's the negative aspect where you start ignoring others potentially for your own things. So that happens. And it's just really good. It's very striking and thought provoking. So what about
I think I read one review and it's like, in a heartless universe, this show surprisingly has heart from time to time.
100%.
I was like, that's a good quote. That's a good review of this show.
Yeah. So where did you give me your episodes? We said, what were your top two episodes? And if you have more, do it. But, tell me where you saw the humor, the heart, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So there's episodes that every, I like all the episodes, but there's some hit more and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they just did that. And that was, and then, later on, there's going to be pop culture icons and shirts and people saying like, well, there's Pickle Rick and all that kind of stuff is later on in seasons later. But yeah, episode 2, episode 2 is, Lawnmower Dog, I think is the. And so really you have in this episode, really what they're going to do throughout this entire series is, what if science, if unchecked science, or you're not paying attention to these inventions you're doing, if you just keep going with it, it's gonna destroy the entire world, because it's just gonna keep growing and growing and growing. So the premise is they have this dog, Snuffles, and they're like subjugating it. They're rubbing its face in its own urine. And the dad, Jerry, is impatient. Can you make this dog smarter? So Rick's like, sure. We're gonna go on an adventure, and you just kind of take care of this dog and give this helmet to give this dog growing sentience, like it's gonna become self-aware and grow intelligence. And eventually it literally snowballs into like these dogs having like these mech suits that take over the entire world because it becomes smart. So yes, Snuffles abandons his slave name Snuffles and becomes Snowball, and takes over pretty much the world, while Rick and Morty are doing like an Inception dream dive to try to help Morty get an A in math class so he doesn't have to go to school anymore, so he can do more adventures with his granddad. So they go in his math teacher's like brain while he's sleeping and dive deeper and deeper and deeper into his dreams. And so if you like the movie Inception, or you don't think the Inception as good as the rest of the world does, then you're right in line with the writers of the show who take really hard shots at Inception. And there is even like Scary Terry, which is which is the Freddy Krueger character. They go so down deep into nightmares or dreams that Freddy Krueger shows. I'm sorry, not Freddy Krueger. Scary Terry, and they befriend him, and that's how they get out. But it's just so great. And as a dog lover, and as loves dogs, and the way that Snowball acts is right in character what dogs should act. He's like, he's taken over humanity. He's disappointed in humanity, but yet he still has a bond with Morty, because Morty, you've always taken care of me. Come by my side and sit at my right hand as I rule the world. And it's just so good. Yeah, Snowball is one of my favorite characters of all time. So yay, Snowball.
Oh, I love too at the end where, because of course Rick tries to save the day and gives Morty, whatever sickness happens, and Snowball works with his human veterinarian to keep Morty for as long alive as possible. And then comes to the realization that he's going to do whatever it takes to save his pet instead of putting him down, because he realized that they're dogs and they're better than humans. And it's funny, but you're also kind of like, actually, dogs are pure, joyful, beautiful beings that we as humans do not deserve.
That's one point. Snuffles is over the bed of Summer, and she wakes up with him standing over her bed, and he's like, "Where are my testicles, Summer? What have you done with them? Why did you fix me? What did you do with it?" So it's just that kind of like, "Oh, nothing." So yeah, that just so again, my inappropriate humor that I lean into. I just laugh out loud at that stuff. So that's one of my favorite episodes. And if you like, the whole, and that's kind of what these episodes do. They have like the plot A, plot B, and then they introduce these characters one-offs, or they, you think it's a one-off character that's just kind of funny for the joke, and then may show up like 5 seasons later.
Oh yeah,
through a different dimension or another way. So don't blink, because these characters could come back. So it's only the second episode in the entire series, but man, it just, all that it does in it, it's just like what they're going to do the breadth of the series. So
oh yeah, it hits hard. It hits hard though. And that's the episode right after the pilot, and it hits hard. Like it's like Scary Terry is like, the every time, he pretty much after everything Scary Terry says too, he says bitch after it. And me and
like
my friends,
Bad, like Jesse from Breaking Bad.
Yes.
I don't know what came first, but I'm thinking Jesse came first.
Yeah, I think Jesse came first.
Yeah.
And I still do that with my friends. Scary Terry is still lives rent free in my brain. For better or for worse. I think that the one that I think even still when I revisit it, my number one is still Meeseeks and Destroy, which is episode 5, I believe. And oh man, Mr. Meeseeks is one of those characters, like you said, that will just periodically show up in the background or whatever throughout the seasons. And if you don't know, Mr. Meeseeks is this character that basically is brought into existence by Rick has a Meeseeks box because him and Morty are going on an adventure to another dimension where it's like medieval land, and they fight a giant in a beanstalk. And Summer, Jerry, and Beth say, hey, we have these remedial tasks that need to be done. Please help us, Rick. Use your science so we don't have to work hard. And Rick says, here's this Meeseeks box. You just push the button like a genie. Meeseeks goes up. He completes the tasks and stop existing. And of course, instead of giving Mr. Meeseeks simple tasks like open this jar or fix, or change a light bulb, Beth says, I want to be a more complete woman. Summer says, I want to be more popular at school. And Jerry wants to take 2 strokes off his golf game. And all 3 are crazy, but the more achievable one you'd think would be Jerry's 2 strokes. But in the end, the Meeseeks are able to pretty quickly get Beth to feel more complete and Summer to be popular. And of course, Jerry is a loser and a little baby and cannot do it. And so he brings about all these different Meeseeks into existence. And Meeseeks can't stop existing until they complete the task. And so their famous line, existence is pain. And Meeseeks are not supposed to exist longer than, 10, 15 minutes. And some of them are alive for days. And they basically decide to kill Jerry. Because he can't get 2 strokes off his golf game, and they just want to stop existing. And one of the lines he said we could kill him because then he'll have 0 strokes in his golf game. And it's a great thing where Jerry ends up becoming closer with Beth and ends up taking 2 strikes off his golf game and avoids being murdered by the Meeseeks. So it's just so funny.
It really is. And it kind of goes to the heart of their philosophy of life too. Like, it's like, oh, are we just created for one purpose and then we die? And if we don't do that purpose, then existence is pain. So these Meeseeks are kind of like this caricature of like how we all kind of journey through life with like, if we don't fulfill a purpose, then we're just kind of like, we're in agony and pain for just existing, and again, that's an option. But of course, Jerry's the one, and that's an ongoing theme in this whole series or every season, is that Jerry is the loser. He always screws things up. And of course, he's the one that's like, the world's about to end because he can't focus and just square your shoulders and turn your hips, and they're like, it seems like it's easy. And he's like, no, I can't. And he's like, oh my gosh. He's like, how is he? And another Meeseeks walks up. How's he doing? Can we help out? Well, I'm trying. And they're doing their thing. And they're like, when they emerge, they're like, hey, look at me is kind of their
Mr. Meeseeks, look at me.
Mr. Meeseeks, look at me. And it's just a crazy character, but yet again, it holds up a mirror to like human existence and what we're wrestling with. And all these episodes could be just a one shot. Like if you want to go and just watch a particular episode because it has a character or you hear us talk about it, you could watch it where they build on continuity. There's an ongoing, continuous story that builds upon like the lore and a grand narrative with Rick and Morty. But these episodes could just still be one shots that you watch one and done because of like just the story and the comedy behind it. But yeah, they start to build upon this theme that Jerry is just a loser. But how does his family bond? How do they bring together? They don't really like each other, but yet these things happen that pull them closer together, these tragedies and challenges. Meeseeks is a great character. And if you pull up what the image looks like and you look at it, you'll see it in pop culture everywhere.
Everywhere. I actually, when season 1, they were, Adult Swim did like a travel tour where they had like food trucks and a screen to preview like upcoming shows. And they did season 2. And they came to Nashville and I went to this, it was like a free event. And so I was like, they were going to show like the first 2 episodes of season 2 and they ended up raining out. And so there was like so many people, the line was huge and they ended up having to shutting down for safety reasons, but they gave everybody free Meeseeks plushes. And so I have a Meeseeks plush and it hung in my last office and it will be in my, my classroom office as well. So
as a reminder, you have a purpose to teach these kids.
That's exactly right.
If you don't, then existence is pain.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll pick my other episode one of my favorite episodes in the series. There's a lot of good ones, a lot of characters, but I'll also say that episode 8, Rick's D Minutes, instead of 60 Minutes, playing off. Yeah, they all have these puns about stuff that's in pop culture. So Rick's D Minutes as opposed to 60 Minutes TV news shows. And what they're doing is a family's sitting around and they're watching The Bachelor. And Rick is kind of like, what are we watching? This is horrible. Everybody's into it except Rick. And he's like, oh my gosh, really? This is how you're spending your time, your limited time in existence? You're going to do this? So he gets out a box and he turns on interdimensional TV, which is like TV shows from every dimension timeline you could possibly think of, the infinite amount of timelines, where even there's a TV show where like Jerry is popular and is being interviewed by a talk show, David Letterman. He's being interviewed. And so they're like, wait a minute, go back. And it's just some of the craziest stuff you can think of. I think they just got in the writer's room and they let Royland do his thing. And they were like, we're just going to like improv these stupid shows, like a salesman who has ants in my eyes, Johnson. He's just doing a TV commercial where he has ants crawling around his eyes and that's it. And then he goes, I can't see, everything's black, but hey, it's on sale. And then there's this like movie that they pitched, Two Brothers. It's what I can't even explain it. Just pull up Two Brothers on YouTube, Rick and Morty, Two Brothers, and watch that 20-second movie trailer, and you will laugh out loud. And then there was one like where the guy was selling doors or fake doors.
Oh yeah, real fake doors.
Real fake doors. And then they thought they were just watching a commercial, and then all of a sudden it just kind of goes through this guy's life, like driving home. And he gets out and he goes to his house, checks his mail, and he goes in the house. And you're like, what are we watching? But in between this episode of these like crazy one-off like jokes, you also have like Beth and Jerry wanting to see what their life would be like if they had not accidentally gotten pregnant with Summer, and what their lives could have been like. Would have been better, would have been worse. Summer is going through this existential crisis of like, what if she was aborted? What if she didn't exist? Would everybody's life be better? And so in the end, though, it does have a little bit of a heartwarming story because they realize that in every timeline they kind of find each other and fall in love. So there's like almost like these Spider-Verse canon events where it's like, here we go. So yeah, in the midst of like nonsense, literally nonsense,
right,
and jokes that like you're like, how did anybody think of that? There's like even this kind of family connection where they're trying to figure out where they bond and how they love each other through all things. So yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, I love that. And the one and interdimensional TV will come up again in other seasons too. Like you can't wait for that episode where they just go to town, the writer's room, and think of like just crazy stuff.
It's one of the things that some people criticize Royland's humor because he does that improv where he just goes and does obnoxious stuff. And part of it is he'll just repeat the same thing over again. like with the two brothers where he's like, there's two brothers and aliens and two brothers again and this and that. And it just, and of course, then they leave him laughing, because he's just being so dumb. But that's just so funny. And I think one of the strengths of the show is, like you said, in the midst of that nonsense, we're almost like this fateful type of family uniting and like meaning, basically being like, no matter what, you're going to end up together and, finding meaning and love in this family. And I think that's one of the almost the more complex, masterful aspects of the show, that in the midst of like the chaos, and they have A and B plots for each episode and kind of, synthesize them at the end. And they just do it so masterfully well with story. And the jokes just land. And it's just, and that episode is a great one. Is Baby Legs in that one too? Or is that a different interdimensional?
Yes, that's the police officer detective who's Baby Legs. He's just a detective who has baby legs, but he walks like a baby. And people are like, shouldn't you? And he's like, I'm a good detective. Yeah, it's nonsense. It's stupid. It's like, what if you had a whole TV show where everyone's just, quote unquote normal, and then like one person just has baby legs.
Yeah,
and goes through life.
the uncharted territory that Rick and Morty explores. You're welcome.
Yep.
I think my other favorite episode is probably the M. Night Shyamalan's one. I really enjoyed that one, and I think one of the ways that I rank episodes of Rick and Morty, and most episodes in general that are comedy, like South Park or something, is like the comedy and whether the jokes hit. That's where I rate it. And I just think the jokes in that one are hilarious. They're the Slygerians, scammers, instead of Nigerian, like the Nigerian princes who ask people for stuff. And, just the fact that the jokes in there are hilarious. And Jerry, they're in a simulation essentially, and they're trying to trick Rick into giving them these aliens the recipe for dark matter. And Jerry gets roped in there for some reason and sells an ad campaign for apples and finds the most meaning in his life, and it's completely fake. And it's great. So, yeah.
And the voice actors, like you'll recognize voice and you're like, I think that's John Oliver. And you're like, yep, you look it up and there's John Oliver, speaking, or Colbert is a voice, So Dan Harmon, who's been, is no slouch when it comes, you think he's just like a goofy, 20-minute cartoon, with, potty humor, but then like he's got the pull from Community in Hollywood, and he's got these big time movie stars and actors and people in pop culture to do voicing for this show, and you'll recognize voices in that. So that's another good one where you start recognizing voices in there and you're like, okay, I think I know who that is.
Yeah, they feature a celebrity like every episode, I think even later on, which it's not an endorsement or a dismissal, but it's just how impactful the show is. They got Elon Musk to do a voice for the show, which is just how wide ranging their reach is. It's just crazy that someone like Elon Musk, I think Kanye loved their show and actually paid them, I think when he was still married to Kim Kardashian, paid them specifically to make him a individualized birthday cartoon for him. And it's just like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
It is.
So, where do you think? So, looking where we are, but, I mentioned South Park and stuff, but within cultural phenomenons, obviously Rick and Morty's been around for a decade now. But where do you think it stands in, the pantheon of The Simpsons, South Park, and Family Guy are like the big three that people, that are still going? People use them as reference points. Do you think Rick and Morty belongs in that pantheon?
It definitely does. I
agree.
I think it does, with the intelligent, right? You would think like unintelligent humor, but intelligent, like meta narratives where they're digging at certain pop culture things, but also telling a story, and has this kind of multiverse. They do the multiverse in a way that's just not like, it's not dumb or dismissive. Like it's actually could work. Like you start thinking about these things.
Good
like,
sci-fi too.
There's good sci-fi stuff in there that like they explain things well in this kind of goofball cartoon. But I think its mainstay, if you just judge it by like its presence at pop culture, Comic-Cons, T-shirts, commercials. Yeah, it was kind of an underground thing, and they even dig at itself about being, almost kind of selling out and doing commercials for like Taco Bell or whatever. But like it's up there, and I think it's just in terms of The Simpsons, it's not just a cartoon. Yeah, for kids, but it has like adult humor and wrestles with big stories and questions. This is right up there with it. And so, yeah, it'd be interesting because these guys are so volatile and such a lightning rod. And it'd be interesting to see what history will tell, in terms of these creators and where it stays. But it's right up there with like people can't wait for the next season to see how it unfolds and the ongoing continuity. Like towards the end of season 1, you then start to see the Council of Ricks.
Oh yeah,
this multiverse, like underground, evil Rick and evil Morty, who's the behind the scenes, and you think, oh, that's kind of fun because they're multiverse. There might be evil Will out there somewhere, doppelganger, whatever. But yet there's an ongoing narrative or plot line that's being brought into other seasons as well that they're building upon. And then the finale, is you think they're just having like a big party because the parents are gone. They can party. Like there's characters that show up at this party. They're just bonkers. I can imagine how they came up with that in the writing room, laughing and writing it up on like a whiteboard, these ideas. Yeah. But they're going to show up later on in other seasons too. So again, it's up there. It's up there on the pantheon of adult cartoons that stick around and have its impact on pop culture.
Yeah, I think part of it too, you can see is just the longevity of like merchandise in pop culture, because obviously pop culture is really connected to market and production of things in our culture. And I think that they're still, outselling South Park merch and Family Guy merch and Simpsons merch and Rick and Morty.
State Fair. Go to State Fair, and there they are
everywhere, man, everywhere. Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. It's a great writing. The jokes are really funny, and like you said, the cultural longevity is there. So we had kind of talked about it a little bit, and before we get to the wrap up, just kind of we talked about how probably the main showrunners are atheists themselves, not really into it's very nihilistic, but what, as people of faith, which is you and I, and maybe people who are, and probably lots of people who are listening to this, like, why do you think it is potentially good for us to engage with Rick and Morty's, particular atheistic nihilism, or at least how can we do that healthily?
Yeah, I think one, we could, as people of faith, we stick our head in the sand and ignore that that's a philosophical option that's been around a long time, for thousands of years,
Right.
And so, yeah, and to understand what's in the zeitgeist or in pop culture, or what, not just like what people are, not just spying on people for an agenda so that we have arguments to win them to our side. That's not why I'm watching it. I would legitimately want to understand why they see the universe that way.
Yeah.
And go underneath. If they're asking a question or they have a joke, what's behind that joke? What are they really wrestling with? What are their deepest fears? What keeps them up at night? What are the big questions that haunt them that they can't let go of? And, I think if you write, they may say that they're atheists. They don't believe God, rip that Band-Aid off, that God doesn't exist, but you keep pushing them. Maybe I think we're all on the spectrum of agnosticism where we're not sure. So how far are we on that spectrum? And so, you push them hard enough, there's still meaning behind this. There's still family, still love. There's still connection. They want to see a bigger picture behind the universe. Maybe there's a moral arc to the universe or not. And you keep pushing them, then they may say, as we write this, we do see an emergence of a moral arc to the universe. Even Rick Sanchez's universe might have a moral arc to it at some point. And so I don't think when the series is all said and done, they're going to come out and be like, yay, there's a moral arc to the universe and there's purpose and everybody loves each other. And yay,
right.
they rip the hypocrisy of organized religion, new one every other episode. But I think it's good for us to hear that and to understand that, and that people see us that way, or maybe we're putting off that kind of vibe and need to look ourselves in the mirror, but then also see what people are wrestling with. And some of these characters make me laugh really hard. So
100%. Yeah. If you can, if you can address nihilism with really funny jokes, it makes it a lot more palatable. But I'm somebody who is particularly drawn towards nihilism and existentialism myself. And it's, I'm very much like a, I think that I see a point of, like connection with people who maybe are more atheistic nihilists or something like that. But more of because I feel like God has called us to create meaning in our lives with our wills, with other people. And so we're really not that far off, I think, from each other. Then, I know that you've done a lot of religion and science, and not to say that nihilism and atheism has to go with science, but,
right.
I think that when we engage in these questions to say like, yeah, we feel some heavy things and sometimes life feels meaningless. And even when it does, we have to kind of lean on the people we love and make decisions for ourselves. And Rick and Morty, like you said, does it really well while making us laugh at the same time.
Yeah. And you make a good point. Like, yeah, the stereotype is that religion is like, I'm don't believe in science, don't want to go down that road. And then science, the stereotype is like, not going to go down religion that road. But as a person who embraces both,
right.
This is like looking at this, they have to science their way out of, challenges and situations all the time. And yet in them, there's real human relationships going on. And so they say there's no moral arc in the universe, but yet there's something guiding their principles. There's something guiding them and pushing them forward to make choices. And so it's all intertwined with all that. So I think, like this is a perfect example of like, it tries to, but hey, seasons later on, Jesus literally shows up. So you'll have to take that with a grain of salt. Jesus shows up in future seasons. Be warned or go in with a really open sense of humor.
And he's Jesus is hot, and he has what are they? I can't even say it. I won't say it. I won't say it.
Don't say it. But it has some abs. Let's just say that.
Yeah, he's very hot, and the Veggie Tales show up, and they actually see hot Jesus, and sparkle in awe of him. So yeah. So if you want us to talk more about sexy Jesus and Rick and Morty, let us know, and we'll see if we can get there.
We're going to go through all these seasons at some point.
Yes.
So we'll get there. We'll get there, y'all.
All right. So moving into our wrap up, do you have any recommendations for our listeners, Will?
Yeah, I think it's a good time to be a geek. And so my recommendation is going to be like, there's a writer's strike. There may be some slow ups in some of the TV shows and movies that are coming down the road that are supposed to be, that people are like throwing out dates and the press releases. So maybe go back to your favorite show and do some rewatches. Enjoy your stuff now. Secret Invasion is out there. I watched the first episode. I really liked it. It didn't wow me off the chart like it's the best thing I've ever seen in the world, but man, it's Marvel and it's Samuel L. Jackson and Emily Clark, and I'm like, man, it's got such a incredible cast here, and I'm just going to enjoy it for what it is and listen to the story. So yeah, we got a lot of movies coming out, and there may be some things that we wish they had done a little differently, but enjoy the storytelling behind it. And some people worked really hard on these things. So my recommendation is have fun, geek out. If it's not your thing, don't worry about it. Same thing with Rick and Morty. It may be like one of the funniest things you've ever seen, but if you can't take the humor, you're like, it triggers you, or like, nope, this is not for me, then you don't have to watch it. There's a lot of geeky options out there. So enjoy being a geek, and it's a good time to be a geek. It's a good time to be a geek.
Anytime you're a geek and you are struggling with gatekeeping or feeling negative, go to Pastor Will Rose. He'll give you some some priestly geeky advice.
That's right. Do some priestly pastoral care.
I love it.
Geeky pastoral care.
The best kind. For me, I was talking to Will. I am working as a barista again for the summer before I start my job as a teacher in the fall. And I've just been watching a lot of really nerdy espresso and coffee making videos. And there's a guy named James Hoffman who's like the GOAT when it comes to coffee and specialty coffee and stuff. So I would say if you love coffee and you want to up your game, go to James Hoffman's YouTube channel and just do some exploring.
Sweet.
Yeah, I love coffee. I'm addicted.
Yeah, I go to bed at night going, I can't wait for my coffee in the morning. And then my daughter, who's like addicted to coffee as well, is like, that's an addiction. I'm like, yeah, it's not like I'm setting my alarm for 5:30 just so I can do it. But like, yeah, I go to bed thinking like tomorrow I'm gonna get a good night's sleep, and I know what's waiting for me in the morning that's gonna get me up. I can't wait.
They have shown though that studies, this is real, that it improves your heart health, and there's 0 calories, or there's like 5 calories. So if there's something to be addicted to, coffee is the thing to do because it's actually good for you. Obviously, like on a daily basis, not in overconsumption, because then over-consuming anything will kill you.
All in moderation.
That's right.
Be a good steward. Be a good steward of the things you love and geek out on. There you go.
Amen. So everybody, you can go to the YouTube channel. We also have a Discord that you can join. We have Patreon that you can get on there, and you can get extra content, and you can hang out with all the hosts, and it's a good time. Get super nerdy and geeky. We'd love to geek out with you. Did you have something to add, Will?
Oh, I was just gonna say, if you're not following us on Instagram, sometimes I do like my Will's pull list. I'll do like, I'll show you what comics I bought. You can go do that, and then they're growing our YouTube channel. I'm very impressed. What we're doing there, and there's a host of options on YouTube, but it's fun to hang out with friends and hear people who care about you and care about the things you geek out on, and process that with you. So go over and check those out. Subscribe, like, share, all those things help widen our circle.
Yeah, and just from somebody who I have gotten a curated comic book recommendation list from Will. So he's the guy to go to. He's the guy. So it's if nothing else, it's for Will's pull list. But we've also got everybody's awesome on the Systematic Geekology team. So get in there. Come hang out with us. So until the next time, just remember, we're all a chosen people, a geekdom of priests.
This was an Anazao Ministries podcast. If you enjoyed this show and would like to learn more about our network, be sure to check out the Anazao Ministries Podcast Network.